I am Marwan Cameron, and this is The Conduit. All right, y'all. We are here again. It is Thursday. We've got another great show for you. Resiliency Ecosystems. We've got a great workshop, that happens every Thursday night. I apologize that we were not here live for you last week, but I had a procedure and I think they would have sent me home even if I tried to come out, So, but we're here now. We're going to have a great conversation led by Mark. So we have a house full of folks, and we're going to go ahead and jump right into it. Mark, how are you doing this evening?
I'm doing great. And last week was actually pretty awesome. Everybody was really involved. We had a lit night.
Lit. Uh-oh. It's off the chain. No cap?
Yeah.
Will you kind of give us a little...
Okay.
Yeah.
Give us a short summary of what happened.
So without doing too many spoilers on this one, because we kind of went into a place I wasn't planning to go to, but we keep putting off the 4 agreements, which I know you're waiting for. It'll be next week. Okay. Because there are people that want to be here for this, and unfortunately, Carol's not here tonight. Last week, we started talking about the doing. We've been talking about all of the things that we need to learn and the self-work we have to do, why we need to reach out to other people, about perspective. All of these things are key elements to developing the grassroots network we need to create change and to convince people to do things differently. So last week, they put it to me and I said, okay, so what are we really going to do? And so I started talking about the things we're going to do. And there's some projects that are on the books, things we've been working on for a while. I won't go into great detail about them, but we're working on a Food for All project, which is basically to start producing food locally here in Kitsap County that will create an industry and thousands of jobs and food security for the first time ever locally. We talked about some of the reasons that this is important to do, especially now, as we see prices start rising at the grocery store. How many people here have noticed that food has gone up between 15 and 20% over the last year and a half?
So let me tell you, I had surgery Wednesday, so I actually haven't left the house. This is the first day was today, and that's because I had a doctor's appointment. I went into Winco, and Winco is usually pretty cheap.
I love Winco.
I couldn't believe the prices in there. Bacon, $9 for Oscar Mayer bacon. That was shocking.
Yep.
Shocking.
So
we'll buy the really good Hemplers at that point.
And get ready for this. It's going to get worse. One of the things we talked about is the fact that California has drained its aquifers. So we've had an Aquifer Protection Act for a very long time here in Washington State, and long before we really started growing to this rate we are now. In California, they put an Aquifer Protection Act in 2 years ago. So let's talk about the closing the barn door after the animals are all gone. The Central Valley is drained. When the last drought happened, entire towns like Turlock ended up without any water in the wells. They had to import water. So when you think about California representing 30% of the agriculture in the United States, what happens when it fails? What's the food prices going to do?
Or there just won't be any.
Better be self-sufficient.
So we look at a disaster happening here in Kitsap County, anything that can cut us off. And let's talk about the fact that we are 2 bridges and ferries and narrow roads going south. So if something happens here, let's say like Cascadia Rising and Kitsap's on its own, we have 3 days worth of food on the shelves. Wouldn't it be worth it, especially if we can create 1,000 jobs to produce our own food here and have food security?
Yeah, makes sense to me.
So that's one thing. Water security. We talked about some of the ramifications. We talked a little bit about what Minnesota is doing, where the state of Minnesota is actually taken over the water rights for the entire state and closed down the multitude of water districts. Like we have 87 water districts in Kitsap County. No one knows what the other one's doing. We really don't know what it is, what we have. And we're on aquifer here. We don't get runoff. So we get rainfall and aquifer. So these are things we need to pay attention to. So food for all, water for all, power for all. What happens if we don't have power?
Oh, it's like
And
the
I
Stone
asked-
Ages.
And we asked how many people here. Yeah, we asked how many people here had actually had a power outage, and there was not a person without a hand in the air.
Right. Right. Well, let me ask you a question if you don't mind.
Sure.
We know that Microsoft, Bill Gates, bought a bunch of farmland. Like he owns the most farmland in the United States now. 400,000 acres, right? So you have that, and now you have the Waltons that are trying to buy the water, right? Water rights. What do you think is behind that?
They know that. Okay, so the Waltons is Walmart. Let's be clear about that. In 2015, ASDA, which is the British subsidiary of Walmart, wholly owned subsidiary of Walmart, the largest grocer in the United Kingdom, they did a sustainability study. And they determined that 95%, that was a 95% of all of the produce that they get and fresh food that they get is at risk due to climate change. So, if they know it, then Walmart knows it. Walmart is trying to secure their ability to move into the future. Gates is also trying to, but we have fundamental mistakes we're making in the way we're approaching it. And that's why we want to start developing local resources here, because we cannot obviously survive on somebody else owning all of the water and all of the food. So power, water, food, the things that we need to survive, we want to build industry here around and have security here. And while we're doing it, we want to have healthy, nutritious food, organic food grown locally. Did you know, I don't know how many people here know, that we have lost almost 50% of the nutritional value in our food since the 1950s?
Yes, I've heard about this.
It's because the soil has been depleted.
Yeah.
Because the glyphosate, you think of it as just being a pest killer, but it's actually an antibacterial. It's killed off all the bacteria, good and bad, in the soil. So the soil is basically barren.
Yeah. And
You might as well have peat moss with fertilizer in it. That's about how they're farming.
well, the scientists are saying 60 years until we have no more arable soil, which, buy up all the farmland you want. Without arable soil, you're not going to get anywhere.
But
Okay.
they also say that we can reclaim it fairly readily if we do the right thing.
But we have to do it,
Yes.
which is why we're bringing people together to push the issue and to do it ourselves.
My Heather's not here, but I mean, we do that at home.
Yeah.
We've got an active compost pit going, and that compost gets introduced into our garden. And I'm a really good shovel operator. Heather's the one who's the brilliant gardener. But yeah, I think we're going to kind of go back to the 40s when everyone had a victory garden to support the World War II effort. We're going to have to do that again.
Well, it's already starting. We're just going to, we have to do that and other things. As I say, there's no one path, there's multiple paths, and we have to pursue them all because, okay, I posted to Facebook. How many people here saw my post to Facebook about 2 words to live by?
I'm sorry. I'm so bad.
Okay. I know you're not on Facebook. So,
I don't do anything.
inclusive and diverse.
I like both those words for lots of things.
Yeah. About everything. The world, agriculture, everything is about diversity and inclusion. Except for our culture. That's the only thing that's not. So now we're back to doing again, and we need to go somewhere else. So Marwan, was that enough of an answer since we've actually gone into a discussion about it?
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate that. I missed it, so
Yeah.
there was no way to view it. I just wanted to know.
And there
the
are a lot
recap.
of other points to that we'll cover. We kind of spent the whole night, and everybody was charged about doing it. But before we can do it, we have to know how to do it, which is what we've been working on so far. So wrote something up here for us all to contemplate. What is the first one to give me an answer here? When's a hat? What does that mean?
An ornament that goes on your head.
That
It's a
is-
constellation.
That is connect the dots.
Bing, 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 bing.
That is
I'm going to get you a beanie because I know you don't wear golf hats.
and
1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11.
All right.
and you took away my Big Dipper.
I know, I was thinking that.
All right.
But
It was all
Hey.
the Big Dipper.
that looks like calcium.
You just said constellation.
Okay, so I've talked about a lot of things in these workshops, covered a lot of ground, but now we're going to connect the dots a little bit. And we're going to have a very, very interesting discussion because before we can set up a food for all, we have to make sure that we set it up in a way that it is sustainable.
We all have to talk.
And we have to understand that there is going to be pushback from the people who will be losing money by us creating resilience. And the easiest way for them to derail something is to co-opt it. And if we do what we've always done, we're going to
Get what we've always had.
So let's talk about how to see things differently. And I'm going to start this off with something I heard today. So I went to the laundromat today. And at Marwan, I know you're in Bremerton. Have you ever gone to the laundromat, the Pure, P-U-R?
I passed by it today, but I haven't been in there.
Okay, so I went in there, and you have to buy a card instead of pumping quarters in the machine. I will say that the learning curve to do my laundry today was pretty darned intense. And then you have this card, and you have to set it on a shelf, and it takes the money out by setting it on the shelf instead of like slotting it into something or anything else, and you have no control over anything. It's a little scary, and really expensive, by the way. But it is the cleanest laundromat I have ever been in, and it was pretty packed, and there were machines available. So I was very happy about that. But while I was there, I was sitting waiting for my cycle to go through, like you do, and there was a woman with her child there, and she was on the phone with a teacher from her school or the school administrator talking about her son. And I wasn't listening really closely. I didn't know personal details or anything, but they were talking about the fact that he had not received something she expected him to receive, that he had turned in his Chromebook last year and hadn't gotten a new one. And that he has these resources. He does this and this and this. And the mother was going on talking about her child really supportively. It was a beautiful thing to listen to. But then there was something toward the end where the administrator said something, and the mother said, well, yeah, we have to treat everybody the same. And my ears went up, and I sat back, and I went, do we? Should we? And that's our topic tonight.
Why would we?
So we've been talking about people. We've been talking about meeting people where they're at. Let's put it to actual practical use. Should we treat everyone the same?
Hell no.
But that's what we do. We systemize everything.
Individuals.
Well, at some point, yes, because we want to treat everybody with consideration and respect.
Oh, there's a difference. There's a difference between respect and the way you treat someone.
But each person has different needs, and if each person has different strengths and weaknesses, so it's going to look different for each person.
And yet we put them all in a classroom together and force feed them a prepackaged meal that doesn't provide nutrition.
Well, it provides minimal nutrition. You know, my daughter. I refer to her as my daughter. She's my stepdaughter, but she's my daughter. She doesn't have a scientific or mathematical.
One second. Can we pop the microphone over here? And actually, can you bring that other stand up and put it in the middle so we can hear you? They're pretty condensed now, so we can hear everybody. Okay.
Yeah, we can just pass it around.
Go for it.
And so I was talking about my daughter. She doesn't have a scientific or mathematic bone in her body. She's an amazing artist. You know, her strengths are in the arts and things that are a little bit more emotionally based, I guess. And she struggled all through school. She really, I mean, math was not her thing. Science was not her thing. Literature, she did okay. But yeah, you don't take a kid like that and force feed them science and math. They can't do anything with it. Why would we treat everyone the same?
So you're saying we shouldn't?
Hell no.
And yet we all acquiesce to a school system that does.
don't get
and
me
the
going on
government
that.
systems that do.
Yeah, don't get me going on that.
Yeah.
You know, we're all individuals. Let's be individuals.
So I'm going to give an assignment to everybody right now. By next week, I would like you. Actually, you're going to end up with 3 assignments tonight. This is the first of them. This should be relatively painless. Are all of you capable of doing YouTube?
I like you too.
Okay. Tony, you need to write. Okay. Sir Kenneth Robinson.
Kenneth Robinson.
Sir Kenneth Robinson has given 4 talks for TED, and they're all on YouTube. You want to watch his first one. It talks about creativity in schools. He's very funny. You'll enjoy watching it. I guarantee you, if anybody here doesn't give a chuckle at least once in the thing, tell me about that, because I find him really, really engaging. But it's a very good program to watch. It'll also help us with his discussions.
So, Mark, is that the Do Schools Kill Creativity by Sir Ken Robinson?
Yes.
I will put that link in the chat for everyone who is watching live.
He is a professor. He now writes books about education and the fact that we're doing it wrong.
We've been doing it wrong for a long time.
Yeah, but he's calling it out. So, and by Sir Ken Robinson, he has the Order of Bath and all of that.
Sure.
So, that's the first piece on it. Also, if you want to, this is not a required reading piece, but it's something if you want to look at, you can take a look at one of 3 books, or any of the 3 books by John Taylor Gatto, Gatto.
G-A or G-O?
Gatto, Gatto. John Taylor Gatto. The first book that I actually recommend is The Underground History of American Education. There are 2 other books that are interesting reading. One is Weapons of Mass Education, I believe.
Okay.
And the third is Dumbing Us Down.
G-A-T-T-O?
Gatto.
And say those books again.
Okay, The Underground History of American Education, that almost became a required reading for this, but it actually wasn't. It is pertinent, but it isn't something we could easily discuss. The second one is, I think it's called Weapons of Mass Education. But if you look on, if you look on Amazon, I hate to say that, but you'll find it there, and it'll tell you which one it is. The third I'm certain of is Dumbing Us Down. Talks about how our school system is actually designed to dumb us down, not to get us to think, which brings up a criteria of this discussion, which is to say that we do not feel empowered to change the situation we are in ourselves, or together with others. We look for leaders to do it for us. Now, I'm going to ask, after you guys have been through several of my workshops, how many people here believe that there's a leader that's going to do it for us? Yeah, show of hands. No hands? Nobody thinks there's going to be a leader that's going to step forward and do it for us? So do you think that that's
Can
something?
I see something that's not family friendly?
It's going to be on the air.
Okay. All politicians, not the left, not the right, all politicians are assholes.
Well, at least they have the same effect as one. And I know I'm supposed to be neutral, but after watching what's going on, Tom and I were talking earlier, and I'm going to say this, point this out because I think it's pertinent. If Thomas Jefferson suddenly came back to life, I think he would be going around challenging politicians to duels for the lack of what they are not doing.
I think his first question in modern lay terms would be, what? You haven't written any new shit? Times have changed.
So when you think about it, okay, what we're doing here is a framework for change. Okay, that's what the Kitsap Resiliency Project is, a framework for change to create resilient communities. The Constitution of the United States is a framework. The way to make changes to that framework are to make amendments to the Constitution.
Right.
We haven't done one in a long time. Do you think that our laws are perfect? Do you think we should not have been amending things? Let me just take a swing at this one. How about equal rights amendment needs to be revisited, and it has to become the human rights amendment and address everything.
That is perfect verbiage right there.
Yeah, so that would be an amendment I would stand up for. I would bet that 2/3 of the country would stand up for that one.
I bet you. I mean, we have a few fringe assholes here and there, but
So let's go back to what we're talking about now. We do not have leaders that will step up. We don't have leaders. We're supposed to have representatives, not leaders, and that word got changed in here. So let's talk about the fact that we are all different. And we've talked about this all the way through. So let me connect this first dot. Let's do this. Okay. We meet people where they are, not where we want them to be. When we have conversations with people, we listen. We hold ourselves back from having an opinion and let them speak their truth so that we can get to a place where we can agree on something, whatever that is. And I don't care whether the person's a radical, whatever. You'll find someplace you can agree because you're both human. There's a core there somewhere you can find, but you have to be patient and you have to work with them. Now, whether you want to spend that patience when there's somebody easier to have that conversation with, well, that's a whole nother thing. But we have to find a way to have these conversations because we aren't going to get anywhere until we do. So the reason we have these problems with conversations is because I'm seeing you, Nancy, through my filters. My 64 years of experience, of prejudice, of learning, of hurt, of everything that I have experienced, I'm seeing you through those filters, and there's not a damn thing I can do about it. Because they're my filters. And when you see me, same is true. You're seeing me through your filters. Who I really am, you can't see that. I can't see who you really are. We'll see aspects of it as we get to know each other. But we make a lot of judgments right off the top about people that are completely full of shit based on our experience, not our knowledge of them. So if that is true, how can we send a child to school and put them in a prepackaged program when they have experiences of them and their families, their school, their religion, everything else behind them, their strength and their natural strengths about creativity, around science? How do we expect them to thrive in a school? Well, the goal of the school is not to help them thrive. The goal of the school is to create workers, to bring everybody down to a very low bar. And that is what's happened over it's true in a lot of countries, but it's mostly true in America. We brought people down to a very low bar.
Yeah, you don't get away from that bar until you get to something more elite like colleges.
Is that true?
Even colleges are set at different hierarchies.
Same people,
based on how much money you have.
Think about this, because, and actually that's true, but not true. The theory was true. That's the theory that they work with. But the people teaching the kids are the same ones that went through the same school system as everywhere else.
Yeah.
So it's the great leveler.
Right. You've got that hiccup. But, if you have means, if you've got a fat bank account,
you send them to a school with a really great name and the same education as a lower level school.
Right. But you still have that fat bank account to help move them into that elite.
Okay, so let's talk about that for a second.
Place.
Okay, given that we're all pretty much educated to the same level, whether you're going to Stanford or Harvard or whatever, you'll learn some more things, you'll learn some more tools, but you're still not learning to think.
I don't know if that's entirely true. I mean, there's a huge difference between Olympic College and Stanford or Harvard.
Well, but is there a really big difference between Olympic College and University of California? Santa Cruz.
I don't know Santa Cruz. So
It's where they do all of the theory work.
okay.
One of the best country, one of the best math and physics schools.
Then yes, there is a difference.
So the thing is, it's the acceptable rather than the rule of the school. But they don't produce thinkers. They produce people who produce things. The thinkers are by and large, even in normal society that is supported, they're 10, 20, maybe 20%.
Thinkers like the ones you're talking about didn't go through the system. So many of those thinkers came from I
Or
dropped
they-
out of high school and I went and built a widget, and the widget changed the world. Yeah, but so many of those thinkers,
But some did.
a small handful.
Reverend Martin Luther King.
Yep.
He did.
Yep.
John F. Kennedy.
Yep.
He did. So but the question is, how did they avoid being changed? That's a question I ask myself all the time. How did I avoid being changed? I went through the school system.
You probably were changed.
Well, I have, that was my career, was teaching elementary school. So I'm having a little problem with this discussion. Because
Let me just calm you a little bit. Teachers are the only saving grace of the school system.
Because to me, as a teacher, I was caught between the devil and the deep blue sea.
Exactly.
I was right there. I saw who my children were, what they needed, and they changed drastically from year to year. One year it could be, really easy to do what I needed to do. In other years, it's like, I can't do this when you haven't got this yet. We have to start where you're at and then move forward. And we used to, in South Kitsap School District, we used to before we had the state standardized test, we used to have a little one that we used in the school district. And when you would get the results, you would say, here's where you are. This is where most of the kids in your grade are. This is where you were last year. Look at, you've made this growth from here to here. Now, maybe you aren't even in where, we'd like you to be, but you made progress. And that's the most important thing, that wherever you began, you've made growth. And now we have a state test where basically once, they're eager, they want to do. I taught mostly third grade, and so that was the first. I don't know, maybe they've gone down to second grade now, for all I know. But third grade was the first year. You're reading in the directions the same way you read it to the high school students. It's the same format, and it's like, there's some crazy things. But anyway, they after a couple of years, they know they're not going to be able to do it, a lot of them, and they just give up. And for third and fourth grade, they still are kind of striving, and I can try hard and I can do that. They want to, but when you get knocked down a couple times, and nobody has to say, you get the score, you see you didn't do the thing. People can be positive about you, but you can still see that. You can still makes you feel bad.
How long did you teach school?
About 30 years.
Okay, so, and it was mostly third grade.
Yeah, I'd say overall, I taught primary. Let's just put it that way.
Okay.
I taught primary age kids. A lot of it was third grade.
So, in your 30 years, that's a long time.
It is a long time.
That's a long time. In your 30 years of experience, how many kids, percentage-wise or whatever, I know I'm asking you a really tough question here, but how many kids did you experience didn't fit into the curriculum of, well, you need to learn math, you need to learn science, you need to learn English, history, etc., etc. How many of them do you think maybe fit into, because right now I'm thinking about my oldest, right? She's a brilliant artist. I've given her, just as a business owner, right? I've gone and given her challenges saying, hey, I need to market this thing and I need a piece of visual art to do it, right? How many of those kids do you think fit into that strange niche of arts and things that weren't math science related.
Maybe around 25%.
Oh, microphone.
It's on right now, so I'm assuming it's.
Well, yeah, we can pick you up. I just wanted to jump in on that. So
okay.
I think it's important to point out the other side of that too, right? For me, my experience was when I moved here in the ninth grade, or in the ninth grade was 9. I went to what was called Horizon. So it wasn't skipping a grade, but it was an open concept. My teacher was Mr. Breinstein at Broadview Thompson in Seattle, and
So it was an enrichment program.
yeah, it was an enrichment program, and so the opposite is very much needed too, right?
Yes.
So it's
I mean, there's the and I was getting there. I mean,
Mhm.
I've so many things. I mean, so there's my daughter who is very visually artistic oriented, right? And then there's my son who's on the autism spectrum,
Mhm.
and that's a whole different world of, oh my God, what did we get into here?
And I will point out that Isaac saved our butt on Saturday.
Oh, Isaac is that kid.
But I think that gets to the point that all size, one size doesn't fit all, right?
Yeah.
You have kids that are going to
Doesn't fit
progress
anyone.
more slowly. You have folks that can fit whatever the standard, I won't say core competency,
Yeah,
but
and
core math. That's
and then
a whole other
there's-
thing.
Then there's the people who just have a skill set that isn't being supported by our system.
Right. Which
Arts
turns
is
into
one because the arts have been stripped out, virtually stripped out of the schools.
but that turns into behavioral issues, right?
Yeah,
Because
but
the child is
absolutely.
not.
So, me personally, I'm a hands-on guy,
Mhm.
right? I mean, most of my life, I'm an electrician, right? And I build things and I do metal work and woodwork and so on.
Make whiskey.
And I make whiskey. But we've taken shop out of the schools. We've taken metal work out of the schools.
Auto mechanics.
We've taken all this out of why? These are all useful, skillful trades. You learn how to be a good mechanic. You're set for life.
Because we've decided that your how you perform scholastically is more important than all those other things.
Yep, move the mic back over.
Why?
Well, here's another why. We're no longer in an agrarian society. Why are we taking off summer when other countries have school all
Yeah.
year long?
So here's another piece of this puzzle. So I'm going to
That's old tradition.
I'm going to connect another dot here.
Agriculture.
I'm going to connect another dot here. Brownsville wastewater treatment plant offers tours.
Ugh.
And it's actually really fascinating.
Okay.
So one of the things I learned on the tour is that most of the people there have been there 30 years and they can't retire.
Why? Because there's nobody else that can do it.
There's nobody interning to go into that position. The power companies are struggling to find people to be linemen and do basic large scale electronic work.
So, do you know how dangerous that is?
Beside the point, blue collar is starting to fail, and it's going to it's already creating a crisis in this country.
Yeah, no. So I
But you
came
can't
up.
ship that overseas.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I came up as an electrician, but one of my buddies was a lineman. He was like, "Hey, man, you should join the linemen's union." And then I heard the horror stories, like the guy that went into an electrical vault, and someone pushed the wrong button and didn't shut that vault down, and all that was left of the guy that went in there was enough to hose down.
Well, let's be honest. In all trades, there's some of that. I was a welder, so let me just talk about some of the things I've seen there.
Sure.
I can't tell you how many guys I knew that smoked a joint and walked off a roof who were roofers.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's
was a brick
the
mason,
stories
same
about
thing.
there's the stories about everybody. But the crisis is that all the people who fix things in our country, we've been sending. So this is my theory, but it's backed up by John Taylor Gatto and a lot of other folks. We have been putting everybody on the fast track to a white collar degree that we have forgotten about the need of services here.
Do you know what plumbing rates are going to be in the next 5 years?
Did you know that people can't get plumbers right now because they just aren't available?
I know, but do you know what the cost of a plumber is going to be in the next 2 to 5
$70,
years?
$80 an hour.
It's probably already-
Keep going.
Okay. So the
Yeah,
point is
it's
we don't
gonna be
have
close to
anybody with the
$300
skills.
an hour.
So let's talk about auto mechanics.
Yeah.
All of the, I mean, we talk about service jobs, but we're not talking about good paying service jobs, blue collar. So in school, we cut arts out because they aren't going to get somebody into a college and they aren't going to get somebody a white collar degree, an MBA. But let's also talk about reality. Back in my day, you have an MBA, you had a job.
Yeah.
Now it's a PhD and you might have the same job. There's an inflation, there's a degree inflation. Now, I'm going to share with you what my brother-in-law used to say, and I laughed at it initially, but I kind of tend to agree with it now, is he said, yeah, BS, bullshit, more shit, piled higher and deeper.
Yep.
BS, MS, PhD.
Yep.
And the fact is that we're seeing the reality of that now, in the fact that we're very shortly going to be in a place where we're going to be up to our asses and feces,
Yep.
and no one's going to be there to fix it. These guys are so good at Brownsville plant that they can tell you what's wrong with the process by the smell before the scientists can. These are the quality of these guys, and there's no one following up. They can't hire those people. The county is struggling to get any jobs filled in what they call labor or blue collar or the manual services sector.
Yeah.
And those are $35, $40 an hour jobs. They're the guys at the Brownsville plant that have been there for 30 years are making well into the 5 digits,
So
6 digits.
I can tell you now, as someone who was previously an electrician, and to keep my business and my life and all that rolling, my friendly rate to my family and friends is $30 an hour as an electrician.
Yeah.
That's my friendly rate.
This is a crisis we're having. So when we start connecting the dots, you see that our school system, and this is from Ken Robinson, the video that I asked you guys to watch, it'll support a lot of this. He says, we have an inflation of our degrees. We are cutting the arts and creativity out, which is predominantly what helps us think to find solutions. And I will quote Einstein right here, Albert Einstein, for those of you who don't know, physicist in the United States, said that we will not be able to solve the significant problems we have by using the same level of thinking we used to create them.
Yeah. You have to get simple.
So where are we going to get the thinkers when we're taking creativity out of what we're teaching kids? And again, I'm going to go back to saying that the only saving grace from schools are the teachers, because they bring a human factor in. When all of the administrators and the school system are making these ridiculous choices about how to educate children, it's the teachers who still bring it to life for them. It's the only saving grace. And I will tell you this because I love history, but I never learned my history in school. I found the way that they taught history in school completely ridiculous. History is rich and full of life. And we're reading and remembering, and this is from my days. This is from the 60s and 70s. We're reading and remembering facts, but not the richness of the life of history.
It didn't change in the 80s or 90s.
No, it got worse.
Yeah.
And the people writing...
That was mine.
And the people writing textbooks these days aren't teachers. They aren't educators. They're corporations. And it's a huge, so let's follow the money. So how do we change this? Because by talking to people. I know it seems ridiculous, it's that simple, but to talk to people.
But also, California and Texas are two of the biggest states. And they buy their curriculum by the state, not by the school district, but by the state. Mm-hmm. So they have the biggest bucks to spend, and they have, and Texas is kind of a little country unto itself, and they
and we kind of wish they would become one.
They can sway. I mean, they can sway the way everything goes, and kids come up from there, and they would have been used to all these kind of pre-programmed things where you kind of move on from one thing to the next thing, and then they've come and the parents would be kind of upset because, well, that wasn't happening, and I said, well, we're not, that's not the way we're doing it. We're talking about, understanding what's going on and, questioning things and looking at things from more than one way and
So
And
does,
they had a hard time with that because in Texas, my child was really smart.
ye give me a second.
So-
I gotta kind of.
I'm going to dive in here while you recover. So I have a good friend of my oldest. He in the middle, well, early in his high school. I think it was his early part of his sophomore year. His family packed up and they moved to Louisiana.
Yeah, that's what I'm-
Yeah. So the education standards in Louisiana, let's just be polite here and we'll say they're different.
yeah.
And then he came back to Washington. I don't know what they're teaching down there, but it's not anything useful.
So I think the point here that we've now connected the dot is that the system's broken.
Yes. Hell yes. Resounding yes. Whatever affirmation.
You okay with that, Nancy?
Yeah, except it's hard for me to say it's broken because I've worked my butt off for 30 years.
And
Yeah,
and-
but the
You know,
things
to
that
make
you
it-
were handed as the employee, as the end presenter,
who
of
had the
stuff,
responsibility of working with children and getting them to learn things.
right within the confines of what you were given. It was like, hey, Nancy, here are the things you
And it-
have to
and It
do.
used to be that they would say, here's the curriculum. This is when I started teaching back in the mid-70s. Here's your curriculum, but the bottom line is you are the professional. And so you make the judgment, you can use this, but if you have another way of getting there, you can use your professional judgment about what is best for this child or for this group of kids. And when I left, they were saying, here's the curriculum. We'd really like all third grade teachers to be teaching the same third grade math lesson on the same day, in the same way, using the same script.
What a ridiculous
It's
notion.
like, I'm so done.
So
That's a ridiculous notion.
and yes, in the 70s it wasn't as broken as it is now.
When I first started teaching, we used to do this. This was in primary, but we used to do a lot of we take information from science or social studies, and we would add songs and poetry and art and make it fun, make the math fun. And then we got told, no, you can't do that.
Yeah, I
What is
okay.
it too engaging?
Exactly.
So my first day of high school, and I've told the story before, I'm dyslexic. So in junior high school, I was diagnosed, and therefore it went in my book that I was learning disabled. And the understanding of dyslexia was actually fairly minimal. And then in my final year of junior high school, the switch flipped in my head, and words became pictures, and I was able to read and read fast, and I was actually one of the best readers in the entire school. But when I went to high school, it was in my record, so I got put in remedial. Thank God for my very first class in high school. It was a world history class in my homeroom. It was also my homeroom, and a teacher named Roger Weiss.
I had a world history teacher.
And Roger Weiss walked into the classroom wearing a long tailcoat and a top hat. His beard was the standard beard. He looked all the hell like
Little
Abraham
lamb chops.
Lincoln. He looked like Lincoln. And he walked up to the front of the class, straightened his long tailcoat, his frock coat, and everything. Says, "Hi, I'm Roger Weiss. I will be your homeroom teacher, and I will be your world history teacher." And that man changed my life. And when he realized what was happening and that I was in remedial, and he was my homeroom teacher, my world history teacher, he got me out of it. He said, "Whatever's in the record's wrong. Mark can read. He reads really well," and got me out of it. Otherwise, I'd have spent all 4 years of high school watching film strips and being treated like I was an idiot.
Thing is, I don't think there's any kids that are idiots.
No, there isn't. Which is, again,
They're
why we have
just-
to teach to the person,
Right.
not to the curriculum.
Yeah, there's just kids that need to learn a different way.
So,
There are no stupid people.
So as we connect the dots, we teach people to be non-decision makers. We teach people to follow the rules. We teach people to be workers. And by the way, the school system, this is a pretty well documented fact. Our school system was based on the Prussian model, which is what gave Hitler the Nazi youth. And it was funded initially by industrialists to create workers. Compulsory education in this country started in the 1900s that way. So,
Well, and then what's his face? The millionaire Rockefeller. He endowed schools with money, but the caveat was they could not teach finances
Right.
in school because he didn't want any competition.
Nope.
He didn't want people to understand what was happening.
In my high school, they taught us economics, and we actually did a mock stock market and mock business development.
I made so much money on the stock market in economics.
But the stock market was to support businesses growing, which is not what it is now. So for those of us who remember the past, we're trying not to repeat it. By the way, that's George Santayana. For those of you who don't know, Spanish philosopher, 1950s. His most famous quote is, "Those who do not remember the past are destined to repeat it." And I will have to say that is one of my favorite quotes because it is so true.
So why are we as a society tearing down monuments to things that offend us now by today's vision?
Oh, let's not go into political correctness just yet.
Okay.
Okay. Because we don't think,
No.
we react.
Yeah.
Because we're trained not to think. We're trained to learn and follow leadership.
Directors.
Yeah.
Directions.
So we need to change that. How do we do that? By talking to each other, by agreeing there's a problem and helping lead people into a different direction. Now, sometimes that direction is going to be, they're not going to think it through. They're going to have a value to them. So the value can be either scare or hope. And I will tell you, the fear only works for a while, and we have been force fed it for so long that we're almost inured to it.
I'm not afraid of anything.
So hope is the best thing. And how do we do hope? First of all, we have to be able to engage people, which is our personal work.
I have a challenge to the hope thing.
Okay.
If that's okay.
Sure. The whole point is to be challenging this so that we can make it better.
So we as a population have been scared for so long about do this or else, right? I mean, I think that's a pretty agreeable synopsis.
It is the go-to strategy to manipulate and maneuver and motivate people.
Right. So do this or else.
Right.
We've been afraid for so long that the idea of hope, I think we've all been disenfranchised. I don't think there is hope.
No, but what we have to offer is hope.
But no one believes it.
Well, then we have to do it in such a way that they will.
Right.
But people do believe it. Look at all the charlatans that get money trying to sell hope to people. Con men.
Yeah, con man.
Okay.
That's a good word for it. Yeah.
Con men. Charlatan is a polite way to say con man.
Yeah. But I mean, so going back to that idea though is, I mean, how long has that crowd been around, the charlatans and
they're still selling it.
Right. But I mean, they've been around forever.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, we all have this idea of yeah.
They're selling themselves as making you better, but you still have to do the work.
Right. But I mean, the bullshit alarms go off, right? I mean,
To some people,
I think to most people,
it's still a multi-billion-dollar industry. How many people do you know have done an MLM? Multi-level marketing.
Oh God. I know tons of people that look at that and go, right.
They're still growing, and they're still getting a whole bunch of people thinking that they're going to become rich. And the one thing about an MLM, I suggest anybody who hasn't done one should do an MLM because it is one of the best motivational speaking tours you'll ever have. I don't think that you should stay with one, but you should at least go to one of the conventions once.
Oh God, no. I mean, unless I'm going to get a free vacation to Vegas or something. No.
But people do that because they need hope. They need to find some way out of the system. The reason that they voted for our last president is because they wanted a way out. They wanted something different.
Oh, which last president?
Mm.
Trump, that idiot, or Biden, that idiot?
Well, no, they voted for Trump because Trump represented change. And this is because I've talked to a lot of folks who voted for Trump.
Okay.
And they didn't want the status quo because everybody knows the status quo isn't working. But
yeah, and
but
neither is the anti-status.
but
quo.
let's go back to we're looking for a leader that will take care of it for us. When Obama first got elected, his very first election, I was excited because he said something that was very powerful to me.
We.
Yes, we can. Trouble is that 90% of America heard yes, you can.
He said we.
Yeah, he
A
said
lot.
we. It's about we, and that's what these workshops are about. We. These are about us coming together. I mean, do you think we can have as disparate group as we have and still have the same conversation?
Probably not. Now,
Do we think what?
Okay, so we are very different people.
Yeah.
Everyone in this room is very different.
Yeah.
I was reaching for a word and I didn't get it quite right. Tired after moving for as long as I have, but we are very, very different people, but we're in the same room having the same conversation.
it's a diverse group.
Yeah.
Common interests.
And the common interest is,
The common interest is improving our community and making it a better place, making it resilient, etc., being ready for disaster. But I mean, the things I like best on here are the things that will also be in effect and working and helping our community, even if we're not in a disaster.
The most,
Right.
That's where I was going to go.
resilient communities thrive.
Yeah. The most important part of this whole idea has nothing to do with the small likelihood, however real it may be, Mount Rainier blows its top, Cascadia Rising happens, whatever that case may be. That is a small probability in day-to-day life. But the fact that we're all so
Until it isn't.
well, until it isn't, exactly. But the fact that we all still have to get through day-to-day life, that's a very real thing.
So,
And-
so let's talk about the hope that goes with it, because that's the fear. I mean, that's one of the reasons I stopped doing Shockwave and I stopped talking about Cascadia so much, is because the fact is, creating 1,000 new jobs in Kitsap County, along with food security and nutritious food, is that a plus that everybody can wrap their head around?
Yeah.
That's a huge thing. And I
So-
like that power.
Yeah, and how about creating power where we don't have to worry? We don't have to worry about power outages because we're creating our own power.
Yeah, power to people, I still say.
Yeah.
That's,
Yeah.
And what if we can guarantee that we have water and that somebody is actually managing the water, and we know where our water tables are, so that we always have fresh water here in the county?
So how would that happen?
Well, okay. So again, I say that the food for all.
You don't have any like mountain on.
Okay, so we have to manage our aquifers. So here's a picture of an aquifer. Okay, here's the ground. There's some lakes and rivers and whatever. Underneath the ground, there are layers, kind of like a sponge. Okay, and in that sponge there are pockets, and when you drill a well, you drill into the pocket of water. But it's the aquifer that feeds the well. Okay. So there are layers of aquifer. Let's call this layer 1, okay? And then there's some strata in here, and then there's a second layer, which is a deeper aquifer, okay?
And the
And that's
deeper you
layer
go, the
2.
bigger they get.
Okay? So Kitsap County is entirely reliant on aquifers.
Okay.
Okay, we have one reservoir in Bremerton, which was built a long time ago. We have lots of water. We have lots of streams, and we have some lakes and stuff around here, but nobody's really managing any of it.
Does that reservoir, is that just rainwater collection? Is that really
I don't really know. Okay,
The reservoirs out by
Bremerton.
Yeah, by Bremerton, and kind of goes up past Highway 3 if you're heading up towards Belfair. that the area off to your right is all, and it's stream fed, it's runoff, it's a
Yeah, it's probably a
little
lot
bit
of rain,
everything.
probably
Yeah.
a lot of rainwater.
Yeah.
So here's the important things here. If this drains, it takes 700 years to recharge level 1. 700 years at standard rainfall. Now, if it gets drier, that number changes.
It's bigger.
Gets much bigger. Okay? So on average today, it would take 700 years for the first level of aquifer to recharge with standard rainfall. So we would be reliant almost entirely on the deeper aquifer, which we should never be touching to start with, and all of the surface water. Okay?
You can just frack.
Well, fracking is
Well,
a
that's
different
for
thing.
natural
I know
gas.
it's for gas.
Okay, and this one takes 10,000 years to recharge, and that's only after this one recharges. So it's almost
Only
11.
after that one
Yeah,
recharges?
so that would be 11,000 years if we
Yep.
drain that aquifer.
So what do we?
Yeah,
How do
you might be a kind of old.
So do we know where we're at?
No,
don't know
we
where
have
we're at.
87 water districts, and nobody's looking at the big picture. Bainbridge Island is currently drawing water from Kingston over the bridge, the Agapass Bridge. And if that bridge goes down due to a disaster, Bainbridge Island has no water. But that's no problem because, at least that would be the least of the problems, because if we have a quake big enough to knock down the Agapass Bridge, water pipes are going to be gone anyhow, predominantly. Do you understand what a 9 magnitude quake looks like? It's not the size of it's not like a bigger quake, it's a longer quake. The Loma Prieta quake was
duration.
the Loma Prieta quake, which took down the Bay Bridge,
longer
was
and
the
deeper.
6.9. Took down the Bay Bridge, shut down the Bay Area for like 5 years for the most part. That was a 2-minute quake.
At every decimal point on the Richter scale is an exponent of
Right.
the previous decimal point.
Yeah,
It's not even the whole number.
It's
It's an exponent of the decimal.
Yeah, so a 9 magnitude quake is 5 or 6 minutes of continuous quake, followed by 48 hours of aftershocks of similar size.
So a living nightmare.
Well,
Okay, so we have to read. So all of the 4 alls are thinking about how to build an infrastructure here that is livable for everybody. So yes, shelter for all is in Marwan can bleep that out if he wants. Shelter for all, internet for all, shit cleanup for all, wastewater for all, whatever you want to call it, are all part of this. But I don't know enough to implement it. The food for all I do, because I've done that work over the last decade. The power for all, Germany's shown us a great way to go with that. The other ones are going to take people coming to the table and us putting well. But here's the thing that I want to talk about a little bit more right now as we connect the dots. There does need to be leadership. The Kitsap Resiliency Project has to have leadership. And that leadership can't be resilient ecosystems. Can't be Marwan, can't be Terry, can't be me, can't be Camo, can't be Banjo, because we're here to help facilitate the growth of the project, not own it. It needs to be representative leadership from Kitsap County. It has
Who
to
is
be
that?
people who step up.
Who is that?
We don't know yet.
But then we need people with skill sets that are. I mean, like
No one has a skill
no
set
one person
anymore.
has a skill set for all these things. So you need different. You need somebody with a skill set for the power. You need somebody with a skill set for farming. You need somebody with a skill set for each of these separate.
Well, yes,
things.
within managing each of the projects, but
Right.
we need somebody to come to the table to lead the project, the overall project, and their skill set has to be care about growth of community, the ability to listen, the ability to teach other people to listen, the ability to facilitate conversations, and the ability to represent the community, the larger community, in making decisions about where the project is going to go and what the priorities are going to be.
And so, okay, this is a little bit off track, but is this a program that you designed yourself totally? Or is there sort of a master program that a lot of different people in different communities are looking at to somehow implement in their community?
This is a program that the framework I designed. Okay. How it's going to play out is going to be by what our needs are and how we meet. But the framework gives you the ability to put the pieces together. So as I said, it's like the outline of a jigsaw puzzle. We know what these pieces are going to be. We know what some of the inside pieces are going to be, but it's going to be people like you coming to the table and saying, well, what about this? What about this? And what about this? That are going to fill it out.
But
Let me finish up one thought, because this is in my less nice moments, when somebody says the word best practices to me, knowing that means that they don't want to think about what really needs to be done to solve a problem. They want to go take what they think somebody else has done and apply it directly to what their need, when there's no way in hell it's going to work. I say, wash your mouth out with soap, go sit in the corner for 10 minutes and try and think. Best practices, there is no way we have moved so far away from building community on every level that we have to build a framework and figure out how to do it. So I built the framework. Now we have to figure out how to do it.
But don't you think that looking, like you said, like Germany, the way they had done that was a really great thing.
Absolutely a great model.
Don't you think that that's part of it?
Absolutely.
We wouldn't just go, okay, we'll do exactly what Germany did, because
No.
we aren't Germany. But we can look at that and go,
But they-
look,
but they-
have all these things in place,
Absolutely.
and this is good, and these pieces really fit with what we've got going here.
Absolutely.
only
But you still want to have some people, you still want to refer to some, why would you want to start here with nothing? You'd want to look to see what else is happening.
But we aren't starting with nothing. We're starting with we're starting with who we are as humans.
using Germany as the model only works in the moment. So what Mark has put together won't work if Mount Rainier erupts in 2 days. Everything that Germany has done doesn't mean shit, because now all of a sudden we're in the middle of a disaster. So what Mark has put together it's the framework for good ideas, but those ideas change from moment to moment to moment.
Right,
Because
but I still
our
think you
everyday
wanna look
life-
at what's happening in other places to just
Well, I'm not-
That only
yeah.
works in the moment, though.
But we have to
Where do
figure
we
out how.
start then?
Okay, I agree with you, but we have to figure out how to apply them here and whether they can apply.
Right.
And that's why we need the leadership.
Yeah,
but these
but
particular
where is that
kind of
somewhere?
leaders have
Yeah,
to have
exactly. And that's
a skill set that goes
I don't
along
know.
with each of these.
Do you know anybody who has a skill set like that? Because I don't. And I know a lot of people.
I don't know.
No, not really.
All you can
Sometimes
do
the
is-
skill set comes from being willing to do it and learn the skill as you go. And considering that most of us
Hope
are
for
doing
the best,
jobs
prepare for
that
the
don't
worst.
really work with our skills, we're just making time doing
Sounds like
things,
war.
then maybe we'll find somebody who
Doesn't have to
actually
be a
has the
war.
skill
I mean,
that doesn't know they have the skill
yeah.
because they're
But I
involved and they
mean,
go, hey, I really get
hope
called
for
to
the
do
best,
that.
Prepare for the worst just says, hey,
And that's part of what the framework's about, because we don't know who's going to show up and what they're going to be able to do.
Prepare for Mount Rainier or a Cascadia Rising or whatever.
But the best way to do that is to have a community. The
Right.
best way to prepare all of it is to have a community, and that's
Hope
what
for
we
the
need to
best,
do.
Prepare for the worst.
Yeah.
Be ready.
But
for,
but on the way, but doing it for the right reasons. Creating a food security here by growing our own food and creating jobs and selling to the markets.
that's just hoping for the best. It's like, hey, let's
Let's do this because
it's-
it works in either.
Yeah.
let's
it's either
supply
side or
all the
other.
grocery stores with good food that was harvested yesterday, not shit that was harvested 3 weeks ago in California.
And came 1,500 miles.
For the power.
Yeah.
That it would work. right
Exactly.
now. And the water would work right now. Well, because the
Right.
water could turn into a disaster of its own.
Right, but all of these things
I bet-
are
I
all
bet
these
you.
things are contingent on shit.
But how about doing it because it's a better way to be?
Yeah,
So
that's what
I bet you would have a whole bunch of ideas about how to set up an alternative education system here.
I don't know if I would or not.
I bet you if you thought about it, if you had a
If you thought
whiteboard
that
and
for
said,
15 minutes, you would.
if I could set it up any way I want, I'd go back to the way it was when I started out.
Yeah, but it's not the same. Kids aren't kids. I mean, like when I was growing up, did I have the internet? Did I have, have all these things? I mean, this is like a totally different game now.
It is, but it also presents a whole bunch of opportunity.
But I'm just saying that those are not I'm not a native in those.
Yeah, so I'm just saying there are people that will come to the table and have all kinds of thoughts.
So,
Tony surprises me all the time. I love that hat, by the way.
thank you. Which one is it?
Thou shalt not snivel.
Oh yeah, it's a sobriety hat.
Not supposed to whine about it. Things.
Is your life's improving? Yes. No. Thank God for small victories.
Day by day.
Day by day.
And bad coffee. Sorry.
At times. How many do?
I'll share that story with you at some point.
Thank you.
So connecting the dots. I'm not sure where we're at with connecting the dots.
Well, connecting the dots is understanding that all of this fits together. All of
the individual.
All of what we've been talking about, that I've been talking about, fit together. And you step back 2 paces, and this is what perspective is so important. You suddenly realize that corporations do what they do for very specific reasons, and not 1 or 2 of them, all of them. So if you see all of them doing the same thing, yet they're divergent organizations doing this, why are they all doing the same thing the same way? Because it works. Good, bad, or indifferent, it works. So it's a playbook. They're following a playbook that works for a specific goal. The specific goal is making money. So then you have to see all the things that are failing that aren't being mentioned because they're monofocused on this. We aren't seeing new technologies. We're not adopting cleaner technologies. We're not having any innovation. Matter of fact, I'll tell you a story. And Marwan, I'm going to silence this one for just a minute. Can you tell them that this is it's confidential? I cannot.
We're going to have a confidential conversation for just a second. Just hang right on in.
Do you want me to turn this off?
All right. And we continue back with our podcast.
All right. So, yes. That the shareholder profit is more important than product. It's more important than the customer. It's more important than everything. And therefore, we're driving around on 100-year-old technology, 150-year-old technology with new paint jobs and different fenders. We get innovations a little at a time, but think about this. We have been on this planet for approximately 3 million years, roughly, anthropology.
3.4, 3.5.
Okay, somewhere in there. Okay, 15,000 years ago, things changed. And we became agriculturalists. We started greening city states. We basically created where we were. 3.5 million years, 15,000 years. So everything that's happened has happened in very small, minute number of years. We had some incredible innovations over the last 150 years, and then whomp, to a screeching halt. We're not going to space anymore. Well, corporations are going to space and doing space tourism, but we're not really exploring anymore. We're not doing what we've done. We don't create anything new. We're all we're doing is moving money. That's all we're doing.
We're maintaining the status quo so that the people at the top can continue to get the big bucks, and the rest of us can do our little day-to-day.
No,
jobs.
we've
Well-
accelerated their status quo, and
Yeah.
everybody
Have you
else
noticed that the
is
I'm
haves-
saying
yeah.
that we're doing for the people at the top.
yeah.
That,
Yeah.
And that's the status quo that we are
The-
maintaining.
The
Yeah.
group of haves is getting smaller and richer,
Right.
and the group of have-nots is getting bigger and poorer.
Yeah, the wealthiest people gained $3 trillion during that first year of COVID.
So how about this for hope? We can do better ourselves in this county if we do for ourselves in this county. And what we need is a leadership that is willing to step up and learn the job, because nobody knows the job.
We have to have
Mark-
something to show them.
How do you get to that leadership without it being an elected leadership? Because there is no way
Funny you should ask that.
the general population is going to elect someone into a leadership position to take care of this problem, because the general voting population's too stupid to do it.
Well, funny you should ask that. You know how I've been pushing the network neighborhoods?
Mhm.
So what if somebody networked their neighborhood and then that neighborhood said, why don't you continue to liaise with the larger project? And that person becomes a representative for their neighborhood within the project.
It's a cool idea, but I think most neighborhoods are too stupid to grasp the idea. The problem here is, and
I would argue
I'm
with you.
being mean.
No, I would argue with you on this thing. Said, oh, somebody has to represent us to this neighborhood. Well, it sounds like a good job for you because you're already doing it.
Right.
It's not so much the stupid, it's the lazy. I don't want to take it on, so it's up to you.
I don't necessarily. I would love to be able to give the average person the out, if you will, air quotes and all that, of lazy. I honestly believe.
Okay, overwhelmed is better than lazy.
I still honestly believe the general populace is too stupid to do it.
Well,
I'm
be
grabbing hold of stupid and that word for a reason, because stupid is different from ignorant. Ignorant is not intentional.
Okay.
Ignorant is just not informed.
Give me 1 second, and I want to hear what you have to
Stupid
say.
Is like mindfully oblivious of.
Okay,
what's
so
happening.
and that could be part of overwhelm, but here's what I'm going to say. If they've gone through the network neighborhood process, they're going to be a step above most anyhow, because it's the process itself that will enliven that, that will enrich that experience. But that person who came to them or the one of their neighbors who drove the program
Mhm.
will likely become the liaison with us. And that person will likely have gone through the workshop program
How do you get people to engage with it?
like I am now, slowly and over time. So go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say, I don't like calling them stupid either, because I feel as though
I think
But they
overwhelmed.
are.
I don't think so. I think that we live such busy lives, especially people who have families, who have children at home, and they're both working, and there's not time to.
And they're in a
I mean,
broken
you have
system,
because
trying to make it work.
The network news is not telling you these things. You
Oh,
have that
infotainment?
hunt.
But most people buy into the
I
network
know.
news and they say, "Oh, this is the be all end all."
No,
That is stupidity.
No,
I
it's
don't think
overwhelm
that there's
and
that-
indoctrination.
And I don't think they have the time. I mean, I have the time because I'm retired. So
Yeah.
I sometimes I think I've found out more than I wanted to find out. But because I have
All the time.
Hmm?
All the time.
and but not every. I mean, I didn't have the time to do that. I was a single mom. I had 3 kids, and I was teaching elementary school. I didn't have the time to do that while I was working, and it wasn't because I was stupid. It
So
was because
it's overwhelmed. You're overwhelmed by everything.
I didn't have
So,
limited resources.
Let me rephrase it a little bit for you. there are lots of things that I see people do out there that to me appear stupid. But if you look at it from their point of view and in their shoes, it's overwhelmed. They just don't have time to think because everything is broken. Everything that they're trying to do isn't working. I mean, they've been sold a bill of goods by infotainment and everything else that if you follow this path, you will be successful. Well, that hasn't worked for 30 years, but people are still following the path and hoping that it's going to be successful. They're overwhelmed.
Isn't that the definition of stupidity?
No, it's indefinite. It's the definition of indoctrination in our system, in our cultural system. But it's not individual stupidity. All of them have the same number of brain cells you were born with, different skill sets, different experiences, but they make those decisions because they are overwhelmed by life and cannot make it work, even though they were quite literally promised that it would.
See, I see it as I was promised this and it didn't work, and we all know it didn't work. So I am going to willfully bury my head in the sand.
80% of the people will do exactly that. No, 80% of the people.
Stupidity.
No, that's indoctrination. They have bought into a system that isn't working, and they're going to do more of it. Okay, close your ears for a second. I'm going to say something about school because it's the most obvious example. When something doesn't work, do more of it. The school system, it doesn't work, and we do more of it. And the reason it doesn't work is because we keep adding layers of bureaucracy to it,
right?
And adding more money to cover that bureaucracy. Well,
we're actually getting stupider.
But that's something that's something we appear to us as stupid, and it is certainly unwise. But it is the way we have been indoctrinated. If you look at every layer of culture, this is the connecting the dots. It all works the same way.
But at some point, you've got to be smart enough, wise enough, whatever, to be able to step back and go, oh, we've been doing this since 50, 60, 70, whatever. None of it works.
So one question. Why are we in this room?
Because we are not stupid. And hopefully the people out there, I don't know what camera to point at, but the people out there are also not stupid because they're tuning in and they're looking at
us having a discussion about what's broken and how to fix it.
Right. So they're also aware that everything's broken and something needs to be fixed. They're not stupid. But those that are like
completely indoctrinated,
the same thing. I mean, Einstein himself. Einstein wasn't stupid. Einstein said the definition of insanity.
No, actually, that was AA. It was attributed to him, and I actually attributed it to him and got called out on it. He never actually said that. It's actually the same from Alcoholics Anonymous.
Okay, I don't care who said it. Right. Yeah. I don't care who said it. I mean, the last I heard, it was attributed to Einstein.
Yeah,
Einstein's pretty clever guy.
It's a meme going around out there, but yeah,
whatever.
The fact is, it is a brilliant meme, and it's absolutely true. I quote it frequently myself.
So why are we not stepping back? I mean,
because we're culturally insane.
No, we're culturally stupid.
We're culturally insane. We're broken. So in stupidity, the word of stupidity is a divisive word. I try and avoid it, much like Nancy does. I kind of think of it as we are overwhelmed. We are insane by nature. You can't look at our culture and see what we do and not think that we're insane. You talked about political correctness. This is one of my pet peeves.
I don't talk about political.
No. You talked about it earlier.
Okay.
And I kind of pushed it off. But here's one of my least favorite political correctness things. And I see this all the time. I posted a quote by Henry Ford. Okay. Because it was a good quote by Henry Ford.
Guy.
But Henry Ford was, this is what I got blasted with. He was a misogynist. Mm-hmm. He was a racist. Mm-hmm. And all of these other things. Yes.
But it was still a pretty smart guy when you strip away the crap.
But let's step back for a second and look at that. Is he that by today's standards, or was he that by his time standards?
Yeah.
So can you measure somebody who lived in the turn of the 1900s by today's standards?
That's not fair.
it's not real.
Yeah.
That's called political correctness. We're calling him out, saying he's horrible by today's standards. You can call out Harvey Weinstein and Jeffrey Epstein
Yeah.
and say they were horrible by today's standards,
Because they would live today.
but because they live today.
Yeah.
But you can't call out Attila the Hun or Julius Caesar
I don't know.
or Nero
think
by
some of
today's
those-
standards.
I think some of those people, even by their own time standards, were
True.
shippers.
But would that be Henry Ford?
I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like
Yeah.
Henry Ford created hundreds of thousands of jobs,
Yeah.
improved the economy,
Yeah.
innovated a bunch of stuff. Yes, he was a bad person by today's standards and might have been by his standards. I don't know. I didn't know him, but I'm not willing to call him out by today's standards and think it's meaningful.
I had the same conversation with someone not too long ago about why are we calling out, hell, Martin Luther King. He wasn't by today's standards the cleanest, squeakiest guy. I mean, and he wasn't.
He hung out with Malcolm X. Come on, let's be real
But-
here.
But he was still an innovator. He was still someone who moved society forward by leaps and bounds.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean, there's nobody that can that under a microscope and find something wrong about. You just
No.
can't.
hell, I'm an asshole. Pick me.
Everybody's human.
Nobody
Yeah.
wants to pick an asshole.
Yeah, you
But I was just, like speaking to the politically correct thing. I think that, Trump was elected, and then what we really needed in order to do a lot of the things that are going on right now are people that would go with the politically correct agenda.
Actually, what we need right now
No.
is people.
Yeah, let her
going
speak.
against
This-
Tom,
correct.
I
let her
know,
speak.
that's what- But I'm saying in terms of who people who want to manipulate where we're going as a society, the people that are pulling strings from behind the scenes,
Right.
that's what their agenda is.
Okay.
Yep.
And it worked well to have, I mean, like, Trump was like, I think that Trump looked good initially, but he's kind of like a loose cannon on the deck. I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, he just kind of
everywhere.
ricochets off of everything. I mean,
Yeah.
But Biden's gonna, he was a military guy for his whole career, and he's gonna, and so.
Same old. But you know who's getting elected?
Who?
Progressives everywhere.
I don't know about that. I mean,
No, the numbers are-
progressive left
the-
just took a beating in
No,
this
the
last
progressive
election
right,
cycle.
I think.
Yeah, here, but not in
No,
local
globally.
areas.
I mean, I'm not globally, but it's
Yeah.
I
nationwide.
thought in Virginia that they,
Virginia lost because he wasn't a progressive. He was like, "I'm not Trump," is all he was saying.
Right. I mean, Virginia, the lieutenant governor is a black Republican woman. I mean, her
Let's
social media stuff is her standing there with an AR-15.
yeah, let's cycle back here and stay away from politics a bit. The thing is that we need to change socially. We need to change
Yes.
on a one-to-one level, and I think we've just agreed again that
Yeah, we
it's
need
all
to get
broken
away
up
from
here.
politics.
Let's start on the grassroots. Let's start on the ground and change people's minds.
well,
Yeah.
and when you make a decision that the socially correct thing is the thing to do, to me, it's like, I mean, and I didn't see it this way for a while, but to me, it's like you're letting somebody else dictate what your moral compass should be. It's like you're not thinking anymore for yourself about what I personally think is right or wrong in this situation. Somebody has defined this situation.
They put it in a box for you.
Somebody has defined this as this is the correct and just and honorable and moral and whatever else good thing.
So I'm gonna
to do.
I'm going to say something here, and I've got a crowd here that's I want honest reactions from everybody here. We did an event. We were asked to do an event recently. I won't talk about the people in charge of it. I won't talk about the event, but we did an event. We participated in it. And when the event started, the people in charge of it were going down what I suddenly realized very clearly was a political correct checkbox about what they wanted to have happen and what was there. And I'm like sitting back a little appalled. I think I threw up in my mouth But it was like, we need people of color here to do this. We need people, we need a lesbian agenda here to do this. We need this. And I'm like going, I'm just like really feeling offended right now by listening to this. And Marwan, Sabrina, Tony, I want your thoughts on somebody coming up and saying, well, we need to have people of color here because it will represent this, but it's not really talking about the people of color or as human beings, but it's a political correct agenda. Yeah. So what are your thoughts on things like that? Because I know my thoughts, I'm easily offended by
Well, I
that.
think it's necessary, right?
You do?
So
Okay.
so you called on the 3 black people in the room, right?
Because you're the most affected by it generally. When somebody's doing that, they're calling on you.
But it depends on the space,
Right.
right? So if you come into the black church, then you're the out, right? So then when you're looking for diversity of thought or inclusion, right, and you're trying to do something holistically, then you need to make sure that you have representation from different places, right? Now, that said, if Tony feels the same way and he feels the same way, then you probably don't have diversity of thought, right? So you need to get someone who is black that has a different thought process that is not already in the room, right?
Well, if Tony and I both agree on blah, whatever blah is, yeah.
So then what's the point of him being in the room?
What's the point of the color of the person? Who cares at that point? If 2 people from 2 different places, if Tony and I both agree the sky is blue, then who cares, right?
And well, in that instance, then that would be true. But
But
there's things you're talking about here today that I'm not going to interject in, but I don't agree with what you're saying. When regards to Thomas Jefferson and Henry Ford, right? I mean, he stole a lot of black inventors' work, right? And so we're saying we can't go back and judge. Well, that's not going to help the conversation to interject it here because the point is to do something different, right? So I could jump in there and stall the conversation out, but that's not the point. But that's the diversity of thought, right?
Right. Okay.
And that's because that's my perspective as a black person and understanding history.
And actually, I wish you had.
Yeah, no.
But that derails the conversation of where we're trying to go.
No, actually, it's interesting because I had no idea Henry Ford had pulled anything like that. It was like,
Certainly not taught in the history of schools.
no,
well, absolutely.
No, and that's a shortfall of. I mean, we've been talking about the shortfalls of education for how long now? So that's important to the conversation.
Well, at the same time, it's not practical to try to pull, a demographic from each. It's just not possible, right?
Well, and I mean, the other thing though is, what we're dealing with is community right now. Not community contemporary to Ford. I mean, that was a different time. It was like Mark was mentioning, holding someone to a standard today from 1920.
So actually, let me bring that back to the point. The point
can I
was
jump in really quick because we're
absolutely
talking about community, right?
Yeah.
So let's take what happened with COVID in this county. When the rental assistance came down, they were only hitting a small percentage of the BIPOC community, which is Black, Indigenous, and people of color. Black people really weren't represented. So what KCR and the county did was to hire buy-in force, which are organizations, right? Black organizations for, Black people or whatever the case may be,
right?
Because we interact with our folks, right?
Sure.
To pull them in and reach them and say, hey, this resource is here. This is how you can get help, right? That's the diversity that you need because now you're missing.
Yes, that's important in the moment. Absolutely.
And then to go back to the very first point when you were talking about equality, right? Well, if I'm well-to-do and I have 10 loaves of bread and you have 1 loaf of bread, equality doesn't make sense to say, hey, well, everybody now gets an extra 5 loaves of bread. You already have 10, so you don't need an extra 5, right? But the Black community was not getting the resources of rental assistance, right? So for folks that were able to pay the rent and Black landlords that weren't getting the rent paid by whoever the tenant was, needed to have access to those resources also. So that's the diversity of thought where it is necessary to have different people in the room that are not myopic in their viewpoint.
And-
that also speaks to not everybody needing the same thing. Not everybody needing the same education.
Exactly.
Not everybody needing the same resources, because some people already have resources. And so, I mean, just like when they did that deal where everybody was getting a check for, what was it, a couple $1,000s for a couple times. I mean, you know.
I'm still waiting for mine. I never got one of them. Or a PPP loan. You know, I'm a small business owner. I have 2 companies. I didn't get any of that.
And so it was
Me
like,
neither.
It took a year for me to get the SBA stuff through.
I'm sorry.
No, but I was just saying that
So-
was like, okay, everybody's the same. You're all getting, you know, and really, it wasn't enough to help people that really needed help. And people there, I didn't really need that check. I what do you call it? Donated it.
At the time, I would have been happy to take it.
Yeah, and just one more
Yeah.
thing, and that's why I made the comment about me in Montessori and Horizon, right? So oftentimes when you look at the minority community, it's, well, they're lagging behind, right? So they need all these resources. But in this instance, because we're not a monolith, I was a young man who excelled. And so for me, being in a class with regular kids was a bore, right? I wasn't being challenged. So I needed something to accelerate and stimulate my mind. I learned how to play chess in the 3rd grade. You know, most kids learn how to play checkers, right? We had this open concept. So my experience was different. And that's what I think we're also talking about, right? It's different for each person. It's the puzzle piece. So if you need it slower, then you get it slower so that you can get what you need. If you need it at the regular speed, you get it at the regular speed. But if you need it excelled, then you can get it excelled. So the smart kids don't have to sit back and say, well, I've already done all my work. What else do you want me to do? Well, you know what? Why don't you be a TA and help pass out
Or be the
papers?
only ones that get focused while
Right,
nobody else
right.
does.
So let them excel. And if you're talking about solutions and you were talking about the arts and whatnot, then that's how they can strive, right?
Mhm.
So, and I love that. I taught at OC. And so one of the things that I would do when I taught math, because I taught business math, was to bring in concepts that were important to the people that were in the classroom. So, all right, I can have the textbook here and I can teach from that textbook. They're going to pay me the same, but I'm going to use my own resources. I taught negotiations. I actually paid out of my own pocket to use negotiations from Harvard University, right? And so what does that do? That jazzes them up because they know what Harvard is. It's like, yeah, you can learn at that capacity also. But as far as the math equations, why don't we talk about what's of interest to the people in the room? So, you know, a bunch of younger kids, you know, like cars. All right, we'll talk about rims. So now let's talk about business from that standpoint, you know. So how much does it cost for rims, things like that, if you're going to resell it? And I could teach it that way, and now they're engaged, right? So those are the things that we can do. And to your point, teachers are the ones that really have the power to change it if administration releases the reins and allows us to teach.
And the way that administration, I'm going to make a point, the way that administrations get changed is when people decide that they're doing it the wrong way, and we have to come together and say, no, we don't want that anymore.
Well, see, that takes us back to politics, though, because that
takes us back to grassroots.
Well, but it gets into voting, right? So if we decide that the people that are in charge of a school board are not doing the job right anymore, we vote them out. We vote new people in.
That would be a great societal way to do it. Or we can go to the top. We can stop voting for the idiots that are running a political agenda. Sorry, using the derogatory term "idiot."
No, you're right.
But the people running for people who run for office run for several reasons these days. Very little of that has to do with actual community service.
Yes, I would agree.
But if the entire system's broken, it's not about voting. It's about changing the system. And changing the system means that we have to talk to each other. We have to agree that those things need to be changed.
Yes.
Which is what I think we're doing now.
Well, and
I'd
when
like
you're
to
talking
think.
about representation, like for instance, we were talking about shelter. We need to have some people who are homeless, who are, you know, living outdoors or night by night in a shelter. We need somebody
To represent
them because
Agreed.
They know, I mean, I can have some intellectual idea about their thing, but I don't have any experience.
which is why we use the puzzle as a metaphor for what we do, for the framework, because those people those people, whoever they are going to bring pieces of the puzzle we can't even imagine right now. I do want to address one quick thing. The reason I brought Henry Ford up, and thank you for that, information because I did not know that. But specifically, I brought it up because he had a really good thing to say. And I was actually promoting the thing he was saying, the quote. I don't even remember what it was at this point. Might have been the one about if we hadn't done this, we'd still be riding horses or something. I don't know. But it was actually a really good quote. And the quote, the man got bashed, and the words of the quote were written off as irrelevant because the man was awful. Apparently, he was more awful than I even thought, which is the thing. But the quote and the words are still true. Since then, I have not put up any quotes by Henry Ford, and nobody has challenged my Einstein quotes, thank goodness.
But I think that's important, right? If you're being intellectually honest, you can separate the work, a saying that has powerful meaning, from the person and what they did, right? You can separate those things out. Those things don't have to be canceled out because you did something great, but you weren't the greatest person.
Right.
We can acknowledge that, right?
But in this case with the Facebook environment, it was all about how bad a person he was, and the words were meaningless. Took away entirely from what the words were.
Well,
And so you end up in a situation where you're being politically correct on Facebook, because otherwise you'll never get a conversation at all, because someone will be bashing something irrelevant about the what you said.
What so much of what we do today, though, is we talk about people from yesterdecade, could be 50, 60, 70 years ago. So the means of judging someone's behavior was totally different from today, and we judge a person from 70 years ago with today's standards, and you lose the message.
Or are we distracting from the message totally because you just want to distract, and we have all been learning trollish behavior?
Maybe, who knows?
The other,
Again, both things can be true, right? I mean, slavery was abhorrent, but they were also the founding fathers. You can separate those two out
Yeah,
and say
very
this
true.
was horrible,
Yes.
but this was good. And so
Right.
when you're not being intellectually honest and you
Right.
just have a red herring or straw man argument, things like that,
Right.
We
then
want to
you know.
simplify it. It's
Mhm.
easier to go, this person is an all bad, terrible person. They had nothing to contribute because Jefferson fathered a bunch of children by his staff.
Right.
That makes
I like this.
everything that he had to say about anything else invalid. And
We try to judge everything in black and white, but the world is very seldom black and white. It's just shades of gray. Some
So-
shades are darker than others, but it's all shades of gray.
and I'm curious what you had to say about Jefferson. Basically, that was kind of an off the cuff thing about.
Well,
if-
Nancy
if-
was
if-
saying it, right? I mean,
yeah.
he had sex with a bunch of slaves and had a bunch of children, and but he was one of the forefathers, and you need to acknowledge that and the good things that he did, in regards to the country. You can have that conversation. Now, the problem is I could be excoriated from the black community just because I can have that nuance and parse that out, right?
Yeah.
But the difference is I think part of why we're all sitting here is because we want something different, right? We dare to do something different, even though we have our differences, we have our biases, we have our prejudices, right? We have our domestication on how we were raised, and we have our own ignorances, but we want to do better. We want something better. We know something can be better. And we're saying, you know what? We're going to have some conflict as we go forward, but that's not going to deter us because we're coming together with the spirit of being intellectually honest and trying to grow together, right?
Yep.
And growing requires growing pains, right? I don't know who you are.
Right.
I don't know who you are. I've got to get to know you, right? I don't know her, to a certain extent, but those things are going to come out,
Yeah.
and we're going to have conflict because she's not going to agree with everything that I say.
You actually bring up a good point.
She's got a moment of that right now. Sorry.
Yeah, no, but, I mean, actually, you just brought up a really good point, though. Is I mean, we all. It's funny how we as a society, right? I mean, big picture. We all get on each other about what we don't know. Like, I had no idea. Ford stole a bunch of ideas from someone else. Be them, black, white, Asian. It doesn't matter. I had no idea he stole a bunch. I thought he was an innovator with the idea of assembly line and all that. I didn't know he got the idea from someone else.
Wait until we start talking about Thomas Edison.
Oh, Edison was terrible. I mean, go back to Nikola Tesla.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He just didn't have
Now
the
let's move
political
on to
Right.
clout behind
So
him.
you know,
Well, hold-
but I mean, if we go ahead and just forgive each other those ignorances, because we all have them. I mean, I'm sure that everyone in this room is ignorant of something about something somewhere that you know, quote, shouldn't be ignorant about. If we all just forgive each other that and take the good out of what there is to take it from,
Yeah.
we're all going to be okay.
Tom.
Well, I was just more or less, we got on this kick of all this 300 years ago, diverse information of inventions, but our whole thing was to design an acre. Was it a greenhouse?
Greenhouse.
Half acre.
Yeah, half-acre
And
greenhouse.
then take the house and manufacture the home back on point to see if we can maybe be resourceful and make that home run off the energy without it being on the guidelines of the grid of the economy of what the people
So-
charge us. We would have to experiment with this house and this property to make it work self-sufficiently.
Yeah. So
And
there's
that's where I want to get back to. So if we have
okay.
this
So
big-
there's a
Hold on,
due.
let me finish.
Yeah.
Let me get the big Cascadia thing.
Mhm.
Because most of this, like you said, it's blah. You know, right now we're at blah. And I understand, yeah, there was some stuff in the past that was distorted.
There's a
But
lot.
we keep it moving.
Hell,
I
a
mean,
year
if you
ago
wanna
was
stay in that,
distorted.
that's fine. We can stay in it if you want to.
It
but we're
doesn't
trying
get
to get
anyone.
somewhere else.
anyone
We're trying to get
anywhere.
somewhere else.
We're trying to get somewhere else.
Yeah.
And you comment on everything, but you keep chastising it to bring it back down. And we want to go forward. And
Yes.
you're part of our main brain functioning, and we need you in another spot of your functioning capability that you
Oh,
can take us.
I agree.
We need you. Man, leave that stuff back there. It's way back there. It's okay. You know,
Right. It's just a recognition, you know?
but
'Cause
last-
it's like if we don't recognize where we've screwed up in the past,
Oh, we all do.
we're,
We-
we're
we
destined to
acknowledge.
do it again.
we're not blind to that.
Yeah.
Where we're at right now is where he was talking about that. Was that greenhouse that was the aqua? We had a whole design. We
Yeah.
talked last week. You weren't here. I'm sorry. You know, we were a little bit more liberated and free because we knew we weren't on the camera. So we just
Maybe.
ran.
Yeah. I mean, he was
We were-
cussing up a storm. I was a little
I
stunned.
don't cuss, right?
Wow.
I don't use verbiage. Did he say verbiage? Yeah. But I really,
He
I really
didn't.
like the
I was
fact
just-
that we designed on a half acre. We have the design of what other countries are using to develop a self-sufficient greenhouse and to bring produce out. And
Was that
next
like
to that,
Colorado?
was it Colorado?
Yeah, yeah. Actually,
Colorado?
there was the forest garden greenhouse. Is what we're talking about, and the gentleman who designed it is out of near Aspen, Colorado, which is
Yeah,
about
some
7,200
ridiculous
feet.
altitude. Yeah.
It's okay, but then we had next to it was like, and next to that you need a home that can function, that's self-sufficient also, and it would be all experimental, and see what it would take and see how it could run, and then we would design a bigger one and see if we could house, you know, because we'd have to figure out the plumbing. But I mean, all that stuff you were talking about,
Mhm.
I go, that was reality, because right now we're living off the coattails of what the government's allowing us to have.
And coattail the corporations,
And
and yeah.
corporations, I stand sit corrected. That's fine. We're living off that. If they don't want us to have something, we're limited.
Mhm.
And I say some of the indigenous people are still living off the land, you know. And if we don't learn
So-
how to take care of ourselves when they don't want us to have something, they'll be trying to figure out how are these people still surviving.
Yeah.
We didn't wait on them to take care of us.
Have you read Ishmael yet? Because a lot of those questions are addressed in that.
Okay.
It's a good book.
It is a
really
good
is.
book.
I haven't read it in a
Okay.
long time, but it's a
Some
damn
of the
good
past
book.
stuff is we're suffering in it so much that it's like after a while, sooner or later, we're gonna have to move on.
So, what's tomorrow look like? I mean, what is tomorrow going to look like? By the way, I'm going to sidestep here real quick. On the 16th, we are doing. We're actually having the last day of the workshops. We're talking a little bit of this session of these sessions. 16th of December.
Okay.
16th of December. And then Tom and I are going to have a kind of a celebration to close it off. And we're going to do hot toddies for the holidays. We will do virgin toddies for you.
No, it's a hot boozy drink. It's
Oh,
really
okay.
tasty.
I thought you guys were doing brothels or something.
No brothels here.
Sorry.
So,
I didn't
we're
say
gonna be doing that.
No, it's okay.
But-
it's okay. The brothels
but-
will be elsewhere.
I would like to screen a movie called Need to Grow, because it addresses this. And there's a gentleman named Michael Smith, I think his name is. He's in Whitefish, Montana, and he developed something called the Green Powerhouse. Now, there's several really interesting things about this movie. They talk about food nutrition. They talk about the loss of arable soil. They talk about biochar. But this guy developed basically a greenhouse that does everything. And the power generated by this greenhouse through anaerobic digestion, through through everything they do, can power 100 homes around it and provide food. But it had a mysterious fire
Yes.
that burned it to the ground.
Sound like a sabotage.
There's a bunch of people who are working on innovative things, kind of in little pockets here and there, and a lot of them they knocked off.
Yeah. So Michael Smith, I'm actually emailing Michael Smith right now. He's almost back up and running, having rebuilt the whole thing. And I'm trying to engage him in conversation about what we want to do here. Is anybody interested in giving up another evening after the 16th of December? I know how the holidays get to watch the.
I
Well,
mean,
isn't it on Netflix? I'm pretty sure. Isn't Woody Harrelson involved in that movie?
No, Rosario Dawson's in this one.
Yes.
And actually, I bought a license to, yeah. I bought a license to play it, so I was going to come over here and stream it.
play it here if you want.
Yeah.
Dun, dun, dun.
So if you guys are interested in doing it another day, because I bought a license when it was released to be able to stream it, so I can stream it here.
You can check and see. if
Yeah.
it's available on YouTube, too.
Yeah.
I'm an old man.
Okay.
I can't believe about it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You're an old man.
You can watch
How
it.
much older than me?
28, 29.
Shit, I
Okay.
wish.
Perfect. We can do that. So we'll do that after the 16th. Right. Right.
Not 59.
And do the licensing thing. Okay.
You're really 59.
Um,
59.
So
You
we
look
are
good for 59,
Well,
man.
I stopped doing a lot of stuff.
okay. So we're at 8:30 at this time. Next week we're going to start having a conversation about the 4 agreements and how to be in relationship.
I hope I look.
I
as
think you
good
keep
at
stretching
59.
it out just so it's like I'm coming back, I'm coming back, I'm coming
You're
back.
going to have
Like,
to
it's
blame
the 4
Carol.
agreements.
You're
4
going to have to
agreements.
blame Carol for this one because she really wants to be part of it too, and she couldn't be here tonight.
Yeah, when I missed last week because it was going to be 4 agreements, like, oh man, I was telling Rob, it's like, I'm really going to miss that because we didn't have anyone to record, so I couldn't even send an alternate team out. So it's like, oh, so I'm glad I haven't missed it. But I did enjoy this evening.
Well, actually, last week I held it for you. This week I'm holding it for Carol. So you both better be here next week.
So you
Well,
wanna-
Lord willing.
I mean, read the book.
It's been a minute since I swam from Southworth.
It's really not important, which is why I didn't make it required reading, because we're going to be going through a different interpretation of the 4 agreements or a deeper discussion about it. Right. We are going to put our own twist on it.
And there's a couple of 15 to 20 minute real quick YouTube videos that can go over all 4 for refresher. Pretty cool.
On what, the four agreements?
Yeah, these little monsters are habit forming, man.
A little bit.
All right. So are you
Want some
guys
offers?
feeling like you're learning something?
Yes, this is good conversation. It's very in line with the things that I think are important to a society, but very seldom does it get to be like brought out and discussed and shared with population at large, because most of the population at large is it's a herd of lemmings. They just kind of follow along and
First we're stupid, now we're lemmings.
Actually,
Lemmings, yes.
no, because lemmings don't do what everybody claims they do. Though there is a song, and I made Tom actually has the album now. There's a song by a Canadian band from the 80s called Chilliwack.
Mhm.
It's called Something Better. And it starts off with people run like tired lemmings headed for the sea. But as we now know, lemmings actually don't do mass suicides. It's all a myth.
Yeah, but the whole idea that
I tell you,
lemmings is something that we've been talking about when I'm on radio. But I mean,
It's a metaphor. It's a metaphor for people.
It's a metaphor for sheeple.
It's some sort of a little rodent. Supposedly they come, they're breeding underground all winter. They come up in the spring and they look around and there's wait, so many of them. And they get freaked out. They all just head for
Those
the
muskrat
cliffs.
looking
Yeah,
things.
they go in. They suppose the myth is that they run into the ocean and drown themselves in mass.
Yeah,
But the truth is, they're more like rats than humans, or so
Check
they
this out.
basically stop producing.
We run
Yeah.
this thing and we build this greenhouse and we make a self-sufficient home on a small scale.
You're not going to say where we're going to breed lemmings, are you?
I'm not even thinking
Oh.
about them.
Oh, okay.
I was in the productivity of being self-sufficient and resilient because the main thing here was that if a cascade or something like that happened, we were cut off.
That's a big
Hold on,
sidestep
man.
from
You-
lemmings. No, you're going the right way. We don't want to be a lemming.
So we're self-sufficient.
We build this. If comes into productivity and it hits surface and it works, there's going to be people in communities around here that are going to start doing it. And it's going to upset the corporations, but we're trying to take care of ourselves.
That's
you
the
know?
idea.
And then-
Upset the corporations.
Well, no, the idea is to take care of ourselves and to hell with the
You
corporations.
know, they're going
Right.
to do what they do anyway.
Right.
We're going to move on.
Yeah, I love the idea of
You know,
upsetting
we'll
corporations.
be halfway down the road while they're still pouting. It's like, and
Right.
the people are going to pick up on it that are sharper than us.
Right.
And they're going to move.
And that's-
the smart ones are going to go, hey, what is it that you need?
You know,
So we can start supplying you the things that you need in order to do these things that you
I
want.
mean, because we've been suffering so long under the corporations, is we're getting frustrated with these bills. They got a bill for this, a bill for that, then they tax the bill.
Oh yeah.
Then there's a
Oh yeah.
district area for the bill, so they add a little bit more to that, and it's like, I'm like,
Right,
hold on, man.
but now we're dangerously getting back to politics
So-
that Mark wants to avoid.
Right, and so let me just say one thing because it just reminded me of being somebody who studies history. What's happening to us now reminds me of what doctors used to do to make you well. They would bleed you.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, leeches and yeah.
And then the
I
people
mean-
learned how to take care of themselves, and we got into preventive medicine. We were sick.
Yeah, we didn't need to get bled by the doctor anymore.
Yeah.
Well, if you go back really, really far, like anthropologically speaking, early humans used a trepan or drill holes in their skulls.
let the evil out.
Right, to let the evil spirits out, right? So and there are skulls from 10,000 years ago that have holes bored in them, and there's evidence of the bone growing back, right? So that person survived the whole tray panning, experience.
Okay, now I'm gonna have nightmares.
It did go away.
All right,
We quit
I
drilling
am
holes in skulls.
going offline. So you want to shut the mic off?
Sure.
All right, everyone. That is another show, another workshop, another great stimulating conversation. Hopefully you will join us next week, Thursday at 6:30 for our next podcast on this workshop, which we will be getting into the Book of Ishmael and the Four Agreements. So definitely excited about that. Also, again, there's Tuesday classes that start up
The Four Agreements.
on the 16th of November
16th of
at the same time. That's right. So if you want to get in at the very beginning, on the 16th of November, you can come in and start this from the beginning. Of course, you're always welcome to jump in midstream with this conversation here. The voices are needed. The dialogue is needed.
Can you
hear me now? Yeah, let's continue to change.
Hear me now.
Bring your puzzle piece. I like it.
Voice your
All right. So for
Let it
everyone
be
here, I am
heard.
Marwan Cameron. This is The Conduit. We will see you tomorrow.
Hip hip hooray, Marwan.